Welcome to the High Performance Interviews. Today I am joined by Penny Wood, all the way from the Cotswolds. Hi, Penny.
Hello, Lucy. It's so nice to see you.
Oh, it's great to see you again as well. How are you doing today?
Brilliantly. Any chance to talk about animals always puts a smile on my face.
See now you've given it away. For our audience, we are definitely going to be talking animals today, animal welfare, mental and physical. So if this is your jam, you're definitely going to want to stay around. So Penny, before I ask you to share a bit more of your story and what you do and how you work, I'm just going to do a really quick introduction. So Penny is an Australian expat, longevity zoologist, and cognitive ethnologist, teaching pet parents and zoos how to reclaim full, healthy lifespans of the animals that they love, rather than have them walk the status quo pathway of chronic disease, aging decline, and a lifespan about half of what it actually should be. So, Penny, with that, I'm already loving this subject because first of all, where did you start out? What's your background?
Well, really, it started when I was 5. And I remember this day so vividly. I went to Melbourne Zoo in Australia, and it was not the first time I'd been to the zoo, but this was the school group. And so we had a special tour and we got to see the sea lions being fed. And for the first time in my life, I had seen a person go in and have free contact, what we call free contact, so no barriers between you and the animal. And they were there as friends. And something in me had always wanted that, but I kind of had this belief that you couldn't do that because they're wild and you can't make friends with them because they run away. And here it was in front of me. And I said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go in, I'm going to make friends with them and make their lives happy and healthy. And they're just it's going to be amazing. So that then led into obviously a whole childhood of animal mania, and I had all the posters and the stickers and the books, and I would come home from school and I'd pull off these big scientific books as a kid, and I would sit there reading the Latin names of them and where they lived. I mean, I was the nerd of nerds with animals. Then that obviously translated into university and studying zoology and a bunch of things and work experience in zoos and the whole thing. But along the way, the path kind of defined itself a little bit more than just being a sea lion zookeeper to have fun, into really digging into how can we give these animals an equal or better quality of life under our care as what they would get in the wild doing their own thing. And that's what the question that I come down to every single time. And so when I was working in the mental health side of things, the human animal relationship, and are they happy? Are they expressing themselves? Do they have freedom to do and be who they are? And then I added in the physical health side. So when they're not healthy, why aren't we actually healing them? Do the animals in the wild get the same diseases that they do in captivity? No. Okay, what's going on? And so I dug into all of that. So now I bring both sides of the coin to this question of how can we give them equal or better quality of life under our care?
Oh, that's so fantastic. And with zoos, I mean, you started in zoos, is that right?
I did. Mm-hmm.
And I actually have a cousin who worked in a zoo as a top vet in one of the zoos over in
Oh,
Canada.
amazing.
Yeah. And so I know that he very caring, very loving to his clients, his pet clients. Oh, tell us more about how you combine those two things, because I know with dog walkers, when I'm out and about, it's like, oh gosh, I wish they could actually speak to us and tell us what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
tell us where the pain is, if it's hurting, if they're okay. Sometimes you can tell, with a tail wagging, or if I've got a Dalmatian with a smile on his face. So with zoo animals, how can you tell those sorts of things, Penny?
Well, first thing is, I've never met anybody, zookeeper or pet parent, who didn't wish their animals would actually just open their mouth and speak. And so that underlying kind of, oh my gosh, I just want to help is in all of us. And I love that because that makes it such a good group of people to work with. But here's the thing, they are speaking. Now they're speaking their language, right? Which is body language, which is postural, which is behavioral, which is subtle, because they don't want to draw the attention to themselves out in the wild. And they inherently have sort of secret languages with each other, that so they don't have to make it big and bold like we do. We're a bit thick. So we want the big gesture. Oh, is that what you mean? So when we pay a bit more attention to those things, and I can help people learn that, because of course I've spent probably half my life just sitting quietly and watching the animals and learning from, what does this mean when their whiskers do that? What does it mean when the tail does this? What does it mean if they're going to walk over here and right? So I'm interpreting that, but I'm using science to do so. So I'm using the behavioral neuroscience of the sensory organs. So information comes in via our senses, our brain processes that, a lot of it is filtered out, and what's important is manifested into reality through behavior. So understanding animal behavior and body language is such a big part to interpret what we need to do. So I've actually forgotten your question, but that's that was the tangent that I started with.
That's okay. No, I was saying, how do you work it out what they're telling you, which you've absolutely
there we
answered.
go. So I did it in the end anyway.
You did, yeah, absolutely.
But
It's their body language.
the other interesting side of that, which often people forget, is that the animals know what they need, because obviously everyone's going to learn when they're a baby, right? But once they've accomplished maturity, they are capable of surviving and thriving. So we go, oh, what do you need to survive? And I think that's the wrong question. What do you need to thrive is much better. And they know that inherently, and they will act accordingly out in the wild. So if we look at what happens with wild animals and what they do and how they improve their quality of life, how they get better when they're sick, how they solve conflicts and problems and stresses, and then just bring that into the captive world, then we're using their wisdom in combination with our analysis of what they're saying. And now we have two very viable pieces of information with which to go and act, rather than sitting there with our human spectacles on going, well, everything's through the lens of what I would do if I was you. And that's not the question at all. It's what they would do because they are them.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love that. So it's understanding the knowledge that they have, bringing that to ourselves, or the zookeepers bringing it to themselves, the zoo vets, and then putting it onto the animals that are there and going, oh, that's what that means. Ding. So what successes have you had in zoos? How long have you worked in zoos, Penny?
On and off and in and out, because I worked in zoos first as a volunteer and all that stuff, and then in paid work, and then as a zoo consultant. So you sort of go in and you fix the problem and you go out and you move to the next one. So it's not sort of this consistent pathway. And as I've just explained, I then went and studied this whole medical side of things as well. So it's probably been about 15 years. And then in the pet world more recently, when I realized that such big problems exist in the pet world, that they're really the same issues. We've got a lifespan that is naturally defined by the biology and the DNA of an animal to be, so much, right? And then in the wild, what tends to happen is accident and injury. And so you might go earlier because you got predated upon, or you fell down a well and broke your leg, or whatever it happens to be. But so you don't necessarily get your full thing, but it was through an accident. Nobody's fault. And then in the world where we're looking after the animals, again, they still have their DNA and their biology that says you get this long, but we are the ones who are cutting it in half, typically in half now with dogs and cats, particularly dogs. And so what are we doing that's eroding their life force, that's eroding their DNA's capacity? And when we look at that, it's not accident and injury in most cases. Of course, there's a few, and that's tragic. But in most cases, this is in our control. It's how we look after them, the decisions that we're making on their behalf, that we're, again, using those human glasses instead of thinking, what is it the animal really needs in order to thrive physically and emotionally? If we just change those things, we claim back that other 50%. And now you have dogs living into their 20s and cats living even, not always, even the capacity to go into their 30s. Wow. So it's a big time shift.
That's a huge time shift. Even if it was, not double, but even if it was 50% more, I'm sure a lot of our listeners would be going, okay, tell me more. How do I do this? And I know that you have a couple of programs, and I'm going to put the details in the description box below. So fear not. If you can't stay to the end, you can find out more details about Penny and find out more about how she helps. But continuing on with our conversation, while I'm a pet parent, I have a cat and I have a dog, and I have a Dalmatian who is 13. Now, I think they're supposed to live up to sort of 10 to 12 years old. In the human world, this is in my understanding of what humans say. In your world, however, you're saying he could live up to 20.
So it does with dogs, it does depend a little bit on their size, because if you look at the size of a wolf, that is where we take the science of that's what their DNA it tells you what your lifespan is, and that will shift accordingly, because what we're doing now is changing that DNA expression to look like this or to look like that, and change this right. So we're meddling a little bit as we create different breeds. So a smaller dog is going to live longer than a larger dog, and we know that, and we're not going to change that with what we're doing here, but we can still make everybody's life. So if you're a bigger dog, you can still have longer. If you're a smaller dog, you can have longer. The principles apply. So conventional wisdom will tell you that an extra large breed dog, a giant breed dog, your innings up until about 8 years is considered, average, decent, and if you get to 10 or 11, you're kind of impressive, right? If you are a large dog, then we can stretch that out a little bit further, and you kind of 10 is your average, and maybe you get to 12, 13, 14, something like that. But I'm saying that when we apply these principles of how to look after our animals according to their needs, not our opinions, we're giving them back that full spectrum, that full DNA opportunity, because we're actually nurturing their body correctly. And we're allowing their brain to be expressive and not shut down and start to get bored. When you are bored, your brain starts to atrophy, it gets smaller. And boredom is a really big issue in the captive world, because we've replaced all of their access with our solutions. So they're not problem solving anymore, for example. So anyway, going back to your question, we can expect a large breed dog to be able to get into the late teens, low 20s. And that's a significant difference. And we saw that, it was about the 1970s, on average, this is average, right? Golden retrievers were living up to 18 years, right? That was the average, a golden retriever at 18. If you said your golden retriever now is 18 years old, people give you a heart, we've got, oh my God.
They'd be like, no way.
Right? The average is 9, 8 or 9. That's a big difference.
It's huge.
And it's in 50 years? That's changed in 50 years.
So what's the secret, Penny? Everybody's sitting on the edge of their seats now going, tell us more. What's the secret? What can I do? What am I doing wrong? Because I have dog walkers and they're going, oh, I wish I could understand my dog. I wish I could understand my cat, or some people who have horses is like, they feel like they do understand their horse. They're like
indeed.
horse whisperers, right? And how can we start to improve as pet parents? Because presumably it starts with us, right?
Yes, it does, because we've taken on that role of caretaker.
Yeah.
When they're out in the wild, they're doing that job just fine.
Mm.
So the science tells us that your health and longevity is determined more than 90%. Now, more than 90 is a significant number, right? More than 90% by your lifestyle. Okay. The genetic component that prescribes how long you're going to live is somewhere around 7 or 8%. They're a bit hazy, so I just go it's less than 10, right? So we do, So that is an enormous amount of control that we have. So then we have to look at, okay, so what is biology then? What is it? We live in this body, right? But if you like, the personality of the animal is separate from the body, but they've got to live inside that body. So how do we look after, okay, that's a biological machine.
Yeah.
Okay. It's what you put in determines what you get out, the same as any other machine or factory, right? If I put electricity into my hairdryer, it's going to blow air on me. If I don't plug it in, it's going to do nothing, right? So I want to be able to put in the right things in order to get out the right result. So naturally then, food is going to be a very large component of this. So when I was, and I studied the whole, functional, regenerative and quantum medicine at a very big scale, like years and years worth of stuff. And it was like, this is an enormous quantity of information. I'm never going to be able to teach that. This is literally a degree, right? So how do I condense that down into a half an hour so that people can understand it? And so I looked for what are the threads, what are the common patterns, what is consistently coming up, no matter what disease it is or what species it is or anything. And I have these 7 pillars of animal longevity. And the nice thing about this is you don't have to be a scientist to understand it. Some of my best students in this are 12 years old because they don't have preconceived notions. They go, of course it is, makes total sense. I'm already feeding my dog. Of course that will, So these 7 pillars of animal longevity are the way that you look after your animal. That's their lifestyle. And I already said a minute ago, they've got more than 90% control when we affect lifestyle. So let's do 7 things. And now we're going to have 90% more. We're going to harness that control to take you to the pathway of those better outcomes instead of the status quo outcomes. So nutrition, species appropriate nutrition is pillar number 1. So if you're feeding your dog highly processed food, you are not fulfilling species appropriate nutrition. You're feeding them and they're going to survive, right? You can live on that, but are you going to be thriving? Are you going to be super healthy? Are you going to be optimized? Are you going to be able to fight off anything that comes at you? My answer is going to be no. And we see that every single day in every vet clinic in the world, because most pets are eating highly processed food and most pets are coming in with the same problems. And they're also, as I said, usually passing away at their half age mark instead of their full age mark. So nutrition is so important, species appropriate nutrition. I can go into the other 7, but I want to give you a chance to respond.
Well, it's funny because I've worked with health and nutrition for like 30 years, but for humans. So I'm going, yep, absolutely. It's just like the machine. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a machine, whether it's us, the machine, whether it's the animal, the machine. If you get the right nutrition and you're feeding the cells, you're feeding it at cellular level.
Right.
Those cells are going to be happy cells. They're going to be working. They're going to be regenerating properly because every cell in the body is regenerated. I don't know about animals, but certainly within 365 days with every cell in the human body. So I'm pretty sure it's going to be something similar with animals. Is that right, Penny?
Biology is so conservative. So when you look out at nature, you can see the same principles that undergird life, right, as opposed to a rock, like a tree or a plant or an animal. And the principles that undergird life are the same across the board. So when we look at those 3 things, plants, animals, and humans, we all have the ability to regenerate. And you can't say that about a rock. You can't say that about my chair that I'm sitting in, right? If I smash my chair, it's not going to fix itself. I've got to go and repair it, right? So we can repair, and this is the fundamental difference. And if we just understood how miraculous that is and how simple it is to kind of furnish the body to do that, then all of our worries would just fall off. I mean, I sometimes think you don't need you don't need 4, 5, 6 years to be a medical expert. You just need to understand about 5 basic principles and maybe 20 behaviors. It's I mean, to boil it down, it's that simple. So the cells will replicate if you give them what they need. If you don't, then they will do some of that for some of the time, but they'll get tired and old faster. We call this accelerated aging, right? Aging before your time. And when they're done, and that's it, you know?
So give us a second one.
So detoxification.
Ooh.
So we're talking, first of all, what goes in. So I like to summarize it by going in, out, and optimize are the 3 words that you need to remember. What goes in should be optimizing your cells. What goes out is just as important because you need to take out the trash. Like, there's going to be waste products. I mean, every factory's got some kind of a chimney or a garbage disposal, right? And so do we. We have 6 detox pathways in our body to eliminate that stuff. It used to be as sufficient to cope with the world around us. But unfortunately, we've polluted the world to such an extent now, especially since World War II, with the advent of petrochemical industry explosion, that there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of chemicals that we cannot avoid exposure to. Doesn't matter what kind of bubble you put yourself in. So we need to support the body to get those out as fast as they come in so that they don't sit there and do that damage. Because when they sit there and do the damage, that's the base level of both the disease process and the aging process. And we call that inflammation or inflammaging. Sometimes you put the 2 words together, but that inflammation at the cellular level will drive the disease process into 100 different directions, depending on where your personal weaknesses are in your body, but the aging process. And so you will age faster. So let's get the trash out, detoxification. And it doesn't have to be some grim 14-day green smoothie diet where you're like, oh my gosh, what am I eating? It's so very simple. There's no pain involved. It's not invasive. It's not complicated. It's not expensive. I cannot tell you how easy some of these things are to implement, but I don't meet very many pet parents at all who are incorporating a detoxification protocol as part of their pet care. And it's a big mistake. Even in cats, we've found that they are 23 times more toxically burdened than a human that they live with because of their size.
Oh, it's incredible.
23 times more toxically burdened. So if you're not doing detoxification, that's just sitting there accumulating and speeding up the clock.
That's fascinating. And I know part of what you do is that, as you spoke about, the 7 pillars, which again, we're going to drop a link in the bottom in the description so that anybody's thinking, I need to know more about this, I want to know what the other 5 are, then you're definitely going to find out. And you can work one-to-one with Penny as well, because Penny is absolutely passionate about what she does. So how about sharing something that you would really want to share that we haven't spoken about yet, that's on your heart, that you just want to get out there into the world, Penny? I know you've shared a lot already.
There's a couple of things I'd love to let people know, that no matter who your doctor is, what drugs you're on, or anything that you think is the cure or the solution, there is one thing and one thing only that will heal you, or one thing and one thing only that will heal your pet, and that is their own immune system. That's it. You can put the drugs in, but if you don't have an optimized immune system, it's not going to work properly. You can have great medical advice, but if your immune system's not working properly, all it is advice. This is the only thing that's going to actually heal this particular body. I can't give mine to you. You can't give it. You can't donate it, right? So working with that, working with building this immune system to be at its full functioning level is such a key thing that people miss. So that's the first thing I want to share. But the second thing is that prevention. I wish all this was a lot more sexy and a lot more like rocket science. I'm just telling them as it is, but prevention is better than cure is so real. Like nutrition, detoxification, these are not sexy and exciting things. If I came and said, oh my gosh, there's this thing, right? You'd be a bit more excited. You go, oh my gosh, food, nutrition, exercise, right? But here's how you do it better, right? Because there's the myth of just do it, and most people go, yeah, I don't want to do that. Here's how you can do it at level 10 and then actually really see significant results. But prevention is 10,000 times more valuable than fixing the problem down the line. And here's why. If you start when animals are young, so I work a lot with baby animals, carnivore species, which is my specialty, rather than, let's say, a horse, for example, which I can still help, but I work. So these are cats and dogs. They have a developmental period between week 8 and week 20. There's actually a couple of developmental periods in that time frame. And if you can hook into optimizing those developmental, and I mean physical and emotional development here, if you can hook into that and optimize in those moments, you have set your animal up for life to be healthy, to be happy, to have good moods, strong behavior, confidence, like the whole gamut. I see time and time again, anxiety issues, reactive issues, all kinds of behavioral problems, phobias, right? All of that can be prevented in that time frame up the front there. The same with the cascade of disease process. If you set their lifestyle up correctly from the beginning, then you're not doing additional damage like every day that most people are inadvertently doing, because you put the lifestyle in at the start. So now we're not going to see diseases and stuff. So there's a very tiny window at the start. If you get that right, you've got them good and healthy and strong for 25 years.
Oh my goodness, that's absolutely awesome. And there you were speaking about, okay, get it right at the start, get that foundation right. So people's ears are pricking up going, yeah, but my cat, my dog, my whatever is older than that. They're 2, they're 5, they're 10, they're whatever. Is there also something I can do before I get my next pet, and they are 8 weeks old, that I can do for the love that I have for my animal now? Or is that too late?
No, 100%. It doesn't matter if your dog, I haven't met a dog who's 99 yet, but like you could literally start when they're 99 and still have some benefit. So it doesn't matter when you start. I'm just saying there's more on the table to work with and avoid with that preventative approach. If you haven't got on board at the preventative end, okay, well, we can do it now. We can start to implement that. And you do undo the damage. You do optimize the cells. You do rewind time. You do see symptoms disappearing. You do see weight just magically falling off. And I say magically because when you go to a species appropriate diet, a lot of that inflammation in the body is disappearing and you're feeding the cells properly. And the muscles are going, oh, that's exactly what I needed. I needed to become a muscle, but I couldn't become a muscle because you didn't give me protein. You gave me carbohydrate, because a kibble is carbohydrate. So now the body can say, yes, we can do all the things that we're supposed to do. And so it doesn't matter what age you are, you can have big shifts in happiness and health, and therefore longevity.
Fantastic. And you also mentioned in their behavior. Now, I know from working with humans, when they're eating better, they're feeling better, and then their behavior is better, right? And I'm sure that that translates into the animal world. And so if somebody's got, oh, this dog always barks at everybody because this happened to it and I can't get it to stop jumping up or barking or being aggressive. Again, does that come back down to diet and lifestyle, Penny?
There's two things going on there with behavior. So an animal can have a trauma, the same as we can have a trauma. They can have a bad experience and then learn how to cope with something that is an aberrant way of behaving in order to mitigate that circumstance. So I absolutely do work with trauma animals and help them relearn, how to be, how to relax, how to let that go, how to do all the things. And that's very scientific as well in the process that we use. However, yes, there's this thing called the gut brain axis, right? So this is a scientific pathway in the biological pathway in the body that connects the gut. So that's the digestive part of the alimentary canal after the stomach, right? Connects that to the brain. Now, we actually found out recently that 80% of the communication is actually going up and only 20% is coming down. The brain is not in control of the gut. The gut is, so when you say you got a gut instinct about something, right,
That's your brain.
For real, that's what's going on.
Yeah.
So in the gut, we're making neurotransmitter chemicals. So these are the chemicals that power our brain. Okay, so that's then created. If your gut isn't working optimally, you're not going to create that. That's what the factory is. If everyone's gone off and they're not working, how is that neurotransmitter going to be there? And one of the key ones that they make down there is serotonin, which is your happiness and joyful kind of drug. So without your serotonin, how are you ever going to have that level of happiness and confidence? We must fix the gut in order to fix the brain. Now, there's other things too, but that's just one example of how closely tied the body is to the mind. You cannot separate them and do them two different, and that was the mistake that I made early on in my career, because there was no understanding of that when I was at university studying, that these things were part of the whole. It was like, do you want to be a vet? And I was like, no. Or do you want to be a zoologist? I was like, yes. And in zoology, then I decided to do welfare and, the human animal bond, and to understand animal value systems and their joy and their happiness and all, the cognitive side of things, and so studying all of this neuroscience. And I was like, yeah, but we're not talking about the health bit of the body that's underpinning that's housing it all. They have to go together.
They go together, and this is so peak performance. I mean, this is how I work with, I was going to say adults, with humans. This is how I work with humans, and it's that gut brain, that axis through there that, as you're saying, 80% of the serotonin, the dopamine is made in the gut, and so you have to get that. That's foundational. So this is so peak performance, but it's peak performance for our animals, for animals that we love and care about. And we've taken on that responsibility to do that. And we can absolutely come to you and find out more, because this is totally your jam and has been since you were 5 years old. And you just lent into it more and more and more and more. So with that said, explain a bit more about how people can come to you, Penny, and work with you. What does that program look like? Is it in a group? Is it one-to-one? How does that all work?
So really, it's very bespoke, because although all these principles are principles, and I like to go to the foundation that applies to everybody, the next layer is that every animal is an individual, and your lifestyle and your location, budget, relationship, all of that is unique to you. So I tend to work very intimately with people in a one-to-one relationship, so I can coach you through whatever is pertinent and relevant. So a lot of my programs are one-to-one, so that we can have that investment of me really understanding you being able to actually speak to me, not get lost in just information overload, which is what I find happens so often. Clients come to me and say, I want to listen to your voice because I trust you, and I have no idea what's true and what's not when I don't have someone I trust. And it doesn't have to be me, but they just happen to found me and like me, so that's great. But I hear that thing all the time, is there's so much information out there, it's confusing, conflicting, and I don't know who to trust. So I'm also offering group coaching programs for people when they're aligned together, so that I can serve many more people. There's obviously a reduction in price for that sort of thing, so it can benefit people who wouldn't perhaps be able to do one-to-one. So confident health advocate or confident health ambassador is a teaching that I have for people to reclaim that sovereignty, if you like, over the decisions that are being made for their pets. So often we don't feel qualified to have an in-depth conversation with a vet, for example, because we don't have a medical background. And so we just listen to what the vet says and go with that advice because we want to know, we want to do the best for animals. But the medical industry at large is working to what we call an allopathic model, which is symptom management, which is drugs-based and pharmaceuticals. And there's not an animal on the planet whose body was designed to receive pharmaceuticals. It's designed to receive food and herbs and nature and clay and air and sun and all these other things, but not synthetics. Yeah. The body recognizes a synthetic and it rejects it from the body, which is why most of your drug packets tell you take again after 6 or 8 hours, because the body's gotten rid of it. They're trying to get it out of the system. So you just keep feeding it in, you're actually making the problem worse. So when we're working with a toolkit like that, we don't see animals getting better. And it's when the pet parents don't know how to have that conversation with the vet that they feel disempowered and lost and confused. And so Confident Health Ambassador is a program that I have to help pet parents understand what questions can they ask, what are the underlying principles, and then they can apply that to their situation and then start making wiser choices. Obviously, as well, I have the 7 Pillars program where I teach that for everybody, and we go through not only what they are, but also the dozens of different ways that you can do that according to budget. There's always a champagne version and a lemonade version, right? And like so many things are free. Like I kid you not, I'm not here to spend money and sell products, right? I just sell information, right? So much of this is free and accessible to absolutely every pet parent. But if you're looking for the champagne option because that suits your lifestyle, then that's in there as well. But there are literally, I mean, probably 100 things per pillar that you can do. So you pick and mix what is right for your lifestyle. That's how it gets tailored into the individual.
And so the 7 Pillars is also another group program. Yeah.
Again, it can be one-on-one if you prefer, or it can be group.
Yeah, smashing. And then with the babies, you work one-to-one, don't you?
At the moment, yes, the babies one is just one-to-one. It's a fairly intense time period for you going through dealing with the baby animal and all the things that are happening. So that in-depth level of connection and step-by-step, is really key. So I'm offering that one-to-one. But, as demand increases, I literally won't be able to do it on that level. So we'll expand that to group as well. But right now, yeah, if you want all the access you can have
absolutely. And I can tell you from our listeners, from another program I'm on, if you're being offered that as a one-to-one with somebody who is an absolute expert in their field, jump at the chance, even if you don't have a pet baby at the moment, but you're going to be having one in the future. I mean, that is also an awesome time to learn those things, right? But obviously when you've got the pet, it's more pertinent to what's happening and what things are going on and the type of pet that you've got. But grab Penny's details from below and you'll just, and I already know because I can feel the energy, right? that you are going to get such amazing results with your pets when you're working with Penny. And I'm definitely going to have a separate conversation with Penny about my pet after this. So Penny, thank you so much for joining us. It's been absolutely awesome chatting with you. I hope you've enjoyed it. And thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us.
It's an absolute joy. I mean, literally, I could do this all day with you and share that. And I love to give this information out. So thank you for the opportunity to share that with some of your people.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we're determined to get the word out so that animals can live better, more fulfilled, joyful lives. And that's really important. Fabulous. So for our listeners, there's going to be another video coming up on screen. I'll see you over there. Until then, have the most awesome day. Thank you again for listening. Thank you, Penny, for being here. Bye-bye for now.